So this is video number 2. So in my previous video we did question 1.1 and question 1.2. So let's have a look at question 1.3. So question 1.3 says factorize the following completely. Alright, so let's quickly have a quick overview of what factorization is. So remember with factorization or factorizing, you have 5 methods. So your first method is a common factor. Alright, so you always first start by looking, is there a common factor? Then the second one, if you have 2 terms, then you start looking, maybe I have the difference of 2 squares. Then I have my third one, which is my trinomial. Now obviously you can only have a trinomial if you have 3 terms. Then if you have 4 terms, you know, okay, great, this has to be grouping. And then once again, your last one you learn in grade 10 is your cubes, which means you need to have something to the power of 3. So let's quickly look at this one. Alright, I have x to the power 3 plus x squared minus x minus 1. So I already immediately know that, okay, this is not going to be the difference of 2 squares. Why? Because there's more than 2 terms. Alright, I also know it's not a trinomial because there's more than 3 terms, and I also know it's not cubes because there's no cubes. So my only options is that there's either going to be a common factor throughout, or it's going to be grouping. Now I check first, is there a common factor? Well, no, because here is not an x, so I don't have a common factor. So the only thing that is left for me is grouping. Alright, so with grouping, let's quickly have a look at it. So I have x to the power 3 plus x squared minus x minus 1. So the easiest way always is to group your first 2 terms together and then your second 2 terms. But in an instance, let's say it doesn't work out like this, then you can go and rearrange them until you have 2 groups that have something in common. That's very important. Alright, so sometimes you need to rearrange your terms so that you can get groups. Alright, now if I look here in my group 1, what is common between x to the power 3 and x squared? Well, obviously there's an x squared. So if I make my bracket and I remove an x squared, then I'll ask myself, I had 3 x's, I removed 2, so how many is left? Only 1. Plus, I had 2 x's, I removed both, so what is left? I have a 1. Alright, so what is in between my 2 groups is a minus. Very important. If this is a minus, then it means that sign there has to change. So if I have a minus in front, then this sign here has to become a positive. It has to change from a negative to a positive. Alright, is there anything common between x and 1? No. So this is just going to become x plus 1. Now if you get to this step and you don't have a common factor or a common bracket, so your 2 brackets are not the same, then you go back to step 1 and you go and rearrange. Alright, but now I have an x plus 1 and an x plus 1, so I can take out this as a common bracket, and then I can make my second bracket for what is left. So if I remove this bracket, I remove this bracket, what is left? I have an x squared, a minus, and remember there's nothing that has to be replaced with a 1. Then always, before you decide you're just done, just make 100% sure, is there nothing else I can factorize? Because in this case, for example, what do I have there? I still have the difference of 2 squares, which means I have my x plus 1, and then what happens with the difference of 2 squares? I have 2 brackets, one bracket has a plus, one has a negative. I go and find the square root of x squared, which gives me x, and I go and find the square root of 1, which gives me 1. And now that is my final answer. Alright, so make sure of grouping. First, you always go and check, must I rearrange my terms? If not, I then go and find the common factors, and then I should have 2 common brackets. And then make sure in the end, did you fully factorize this? Alright, I think that is the most important thing with question 1.3.